Hello, good morning. This is Rob Shaw from GRAF, and today we're going to be talking about the world's population and the predictions for the population to reach 9 billion people by 2050 and how we're going to feed them all. Let me fire up my PowerPoint and let's get going. Population crash. That doesn't quite tie in with what I've just said. But for years, there's been predictions that the world's population is going to grow and grow beyond its ability to sustain itself. But is that correct? The first major person to predict this was the Rev Thomas Mannus. 200 years ago, he foresaw that the world's population was going to grow exponentially until it grew past the point where it could feed itself, and it would end in pandemics, famine, and disaster and wars. But it's not just something that was predicted 200 years ago. More recently, Paul Elrick was predicting a similar thing happening, the population bomb. Both these guys were real proponents of the modern environmentalism, that human race was going to consume everything on Earth and destroy it. How accurate is it? Well, the predictions we have and the past history show how the population has grown and grew at one point exponentially. But you'll see these predictions are suggesting by 2050 we'll have 9 billion and up to 11 billion people by 2100. But they're only predictions. You can predict anything. How accurate are they? What affects the population growth? Well, it's all down to the fertility rate. How many children are born for every female? And when you look at the current fertility rate, it tells a slightly different story. It's not quite so worrying. So the blue areas are the areas where you're having between 0 and 2 children born for every female. Green areas are between 2 and 3. And then the continent of Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, that's the areas where you've got 5 or 6 children born per female. And of course, to maintain the population, you need approximately 2.1 or 2 children born for every female. The 0.1 and 0.2 are to account for mortality at any stage in life. If you have less than that, then the population will fall. It's shown better by this line graph, and you can clearly see that Africa is the last continent with very high fertility rates, although it's predicted to fall down close to 2.5 by 2050. Everywhere else in the world is already down or getting very close to the replacement rate. So let's talk about peaks. The actual peak global fertility rate was back in 1950s, when you had an average of 5 children born for every female. But that doesn't tell the whole story. In the 1960s, you had the peak population growth on a percentage basis. But percentages don't tell the whole story either. The actual peak population growth in numbers, number of people born, was in 1987. That was when you had the fastest growing population in the world. It's tailed off since then. Some more modern predictions by less sensational people have suggested the peak population will get to 8 or 9 billion people by 2040. But because of falling fertility rates, including Africa, by 2100, the actual population will have fallen to 5 billion people. If that's correct, or anywhere near correct, then that's going to have a major impact on agriculture and food production. We're not going to have to feed 11 billion people. The actual number of people that are going to have to be fed is going to fall. How is that going to affect farming and food production? Any comments on this? As usual, post them below or contact me on LinkedIn. Thanks very much for now.